we'll start then. So we'll start formally and say good morning, good day, and good evening to everyone joining us today. Welcome to this Belmon's Leadership Preparation Development Research Interest Group and the online session today. I'm very proud and thrilled to present the theme today, Crisis Leadership, Implications for Leadership Preparation Development. And as we have advertised and mentioned on social media and in our emails, we have three very different presentations today, and I hope we're going to have an enriched discussion together. We will, if I say, I wrote in the chat who I am, but I can present myself as well. My name is Susanne Salin. I come from Sweden, but work mostly in Norway now. I'm an associate professor at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. And I'm one of the three co-conveners for this research interest group. And I'm doing the work together with Deb Outhwaite and Bernie Moreno, who is here as well. And of course, our Belmas office, Cynthia, is with us today, helping us out with Zoom and the recording. And I think we will just continue. We have the next slide. Just a short presentation of our presenters today. We have Alison Drever from Scotland. She's a workstream lead officer for the West Partnership, and we listened to her this summer at the Belmas conference together with Chris Chapman, and we were so impressed and inspired with their presentations, so we thought we'd invite Alison today as well. And then we have Alex Gardner-McTaggart. He recently worked at Manchester University and just got a new position at the British University of Bahrain. And he has another focus for the presentation, more in relation to education and leadership and the climate crisis. And last but not least, Mowafaq Qadach from Israel. And he will present a perspective of crisis leadership from the pandemic. So I'm really think we will have a great online session together. And I'm pleased to see so many of you here. Thank you for joining us. We will have 20 minutes each for the presentations. And I will be a kind but bad cop, so I will let you know when there's 2 minutes left for the presentation. You don't have to rush it, but just to have around 20 minutes each. And after that, we will have 3 breakout rooms where one of our presenters will be, and we as co-conveners will join each breakout room as well. And we'll have a joint discussions together with all of you who's joining us today. And in the end, we will sum up in the room and see if we have any questions for together. So I think we will just let Alison go. You are very welcome.
Thank you. Let me just pop my slides up onto the screen. Fingers crossed everyone can see that. Good, thank you. A thumbs up is always helpful. I always appreciate that, Bernie. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. I do realise that my presentation will be a little different, probably to what you would usually have today, but I hope it gives you a different perspective. So what I'm going to do over the next 20 minutes is tell you a little bit about the context of Scotland and the context I work in, and then I'm going to talk to you about the work that I do and the impact of that. That's the plan. So Scotland, you may know a bit about it. In terms of education, this is what it looks like. So you'll see that most of our children and young people are educated in publicly funded schools. The private school sector is very small in Scotland. We are a very small country. There's not very many of us. So we only have 2,500 schools and 51,000 FTE equivalent teachers. So not very big. which is both, I think, can make it easier and more complex. It does sort of both of those things depending on what you're trying to do. Education at a glance. So our PISA scores across the board have been, I would say, in decline since pre-COVID. We now sit at around about the OECD average. The Scottish Government over the last few years have had a big investment in a programme they call the Scottish Attainment Challenge, which was designed to try and reduce the poverty-related attainment gap, as they called it. Well, the Scottish Government said close it, which is not a thing that you can really do, so narrow it. There has been some progress in that. COVID obviously threw a bit of a spanner in the works, as it did in many places. And there is still, given how small a country there are still concerns about variations in performance. And the final bullet point there about we are in a period of financial crisis in Scotland. I've been in education for 30 years now, and this is the worst that I have ever seen it and what's coming down the line. So that does have a huge impact on what we are doing and what we will be able to do going forward. And I'll say a little more about that. One common theme that I want to pick out before I tell you what I actually do is this concept of a network learning system. And this has gained some traction across the Scottish system. You'll see what that is on the screen there. And the reference down at the bottom. So ICEA is the International Council of Education Advisors, and that's a group of academics convened by our Cabinet Secretary for Education that advise Scottish Government in relation to education. So the idea of collaboration and learning and bringing those together through a network learning system has gained some traction. My interest is how you do that, because it's great, but the question, I'm one of those people, I'm going, that's great. How do you do that? That's my job, and that's what I'm going to be telling you more about today. So the context specifically that I work in a group of local authorities. They exist all over Scotland, and they are called Regional Improvement Collaboratives. The one I happen to work in is in the west of the country, centred around Glasgow. And 8 local authorities around that area. It is the largest regional improvement collaborative in Scotland, and we serve, just over a third of Scotland's population, 1,000 schools, just over, well, around about 250,000 children and young people. Our funding stops in March, and I'll come back to that because that has implications for what we do next. So it has been funded since 2017. We have half of the pupils that reside in low SES areas or high SES areas, depending on how you describe it. So the most deprived areas in Scotland, 50% of those exist in the area that I work in. So I think that's a helpful context for the work that we do as well. Okay, so we have this group of 8 local authorities. This is the vision. And you'll see the phrase network learning system appear there. This is how we are going to achieve that vision. And it's how we build that network learning system. Again, they're great words, but my interest is in the how do you make that happen? So this is one of the things that I do as part of my job and part of the much bigger pot of work, if you like, that happens across the whole area. But this is one specific part of it that is part of the job that I do that I'm going to talk to you about today. And it's a suite of programmes and professional learning opportunities for teachers, for head teachers, for officers in our local authority areas, our education districts. And they all come under this banner of Improving Our. And I will tell you what the programmes are and how they work on the next slide. But I want to tell you what they do first, or what we say they do. They all do the same thing. I'm not going to go through this because I'm very sure that on this call, these are words that everyone is familiar with and what the programmes are setting out to achieve. And again, that's great. They're lovely words. How do you actually do that? That's the interesting bit for me, always has been. So that's what we're trying to do. Let me show you what that looks like. I'm going to start in the middle with improving our classrooms. You'll see it there in green. And this is a master's accredited programme. We work with a partner university who accredit that. And anyone that completes this programme gets 30 master's credits. It's free completely to teachers, and they also get professional recognition from our teacher registration body, the General Teaching Council. So this programme takes a year, and it's been around for about, I think it's 14 years now that this has been around. It's for teachers in any sector that want to come on board. It takes a year, and in the programme we have professional learning sessions, and those are done sometimes in local areas, sometimes across districts, with everyone together. Teachers work in a trio with a mentor who has done the programme as well. They visit each other's classrooms, and coming out the other side of it, they do a case study. Now, the important thing in that is it is absolutely focused on their practice, their classroom, their learners. And we are actually just sending out certificates for last year's group today, so it's great. So this year I have 130 teachers signed up to do that. It is, as far as I know, as the caveat, the only free master's provision that exists for teachers in Scotland, certainly anymore. And it works really well. Then it says underneath that district officers and local leads. So working around that programme with me, I have a group of 25. Now they are head teachers, they are local authority officers, they are principal teachers, they might be development officers, and they deliver the programme locally. And they form a really strong network around that support this programme. So for Thinking Network Learning System, this is a fantastic group. I met with them all last week, and they do amazing work around this and supporting this programme. Also, in the top right there, you'll see a little thing that says delivering mentorship. So we were really aware that we had these wonderful teachers being mentors for this programme. So let's help them do that better. So we commissioned a further master's module with our partner university. This module is self-study and assessed via a structured professional discussion. So all our mentors do this programme, and it's about group mentoring theory with self-study units that they apply when they mentor in the programme. But this module is not specific to just improving our classrooms, and these teachers use those skills across their roles. So those two work hand in hand, again, free to anyone that does it. And the certificates are going out for that today as well. So that's where we started. We then introduced the programme on the right called Improving Our Schools, because not everyone wants to do the master's credits and write a 5,000-word essay. So Improving Our Schools is not accredited, but it works across an entire primary school. So we have network sessions where the head teachers, the senior leaders in those primary schools come together. It's absolutely based on their own self-evaluation. What is it we need to do that's going to make things better here? And they would identify a focus from the curriculum, and they identify a learning and teaching focus. And those two things work together. So at the network sessions, they come together and they share those. They visit each other's schools, and they will sometimes facilitate cross-school visits for the teachers, depending on the geography of where everybody is. That's always the caveat with this one. This year, we have about 25 schools doing this, which equates to 300 teachers-ish. What I'm really pleased about this year is the variety in school size that we have. So we have schools that have 2 FTE, up to 30 FTE participating in this. Now, what that tells me is that the balance of flexibility and structure is really good in this programme, because those head teachers see this as really relevant to them. So this programme is about 4 years old. And this programme is driven by a group of senior leaders, head teachers and deputies, most of whom that have done the programme and seen value in it. So they shape and drive that programme. So they're a really good network on their own, but actually they also work with head teachers who are currently doing the programme. So again, it's expanding and developing that network. What we also see is a lot of those schools will have teachers who have done improving our classrooms, and those teachers then play a bigger leadership role in developing, improving our schools within their own school. So you have a really good, strong connection there. So not content with that, 2 years ago, I brought together a wonderful group of principal teachers, faculty heads and deputies in the secondary sector. And I said, okay, what about doing a secondary version of this? So we launched that last year, and we piloted it last year with 25 principal teachers from 8 different local authorities and a big range of subjects. And it went really well. And I'll tell you more about the evaluation in a little minute. This year, we've got 35 departments participating across a big range of subject areas. Again, it's about 300 teachers in total because everyone gets involved. And again, it's absolutely based on what your self-evaluation is telling you you need to do, with network sessions where we bring people together to look at how you use your data, to look at tracking and monitoring of progress, self-evaluation, the line of sight to improvement planning, but with principal teachers and deputies who are doing it in different ways. So it's very focused on practice. And again, we've that fantastic group that develop and drive the programme. Then underpinning that, one of the common factors in these programmes, and one of the things people really value, is that we have a very strong set of professional learning materials that are very focused on pedagogy in this particular instance. And people find that really useful. It comes with bibliographies that are updated annually. It comes with journal reflective tasks. Everything is there and it's accessible via Teams. And if you do the programme, you stay in the team. So when those are updated, you will always have access to them. But we've got these amazing teachers that are coming through these programmes who are doing this on a day-to-day basis in their classroom. And I would really like the materials to be as close as they can be to classroom practice. So I put an offer out and said, would anyone like to come and join this party? This is the next one we're going to build. So we now have leadership of learning groups with amazing teachers, and their job is to look at the policy, the practice and the research around a specific thing. So it might just be questioning, just questioning. Questioning's huge and very important, obviously. And their job is to look at those 3 things and go, right, okay, this is what the research says. Here's what's in the policy. Here's what's happening in our practice. So what is it that these professional learning materials need to do? And then we have a quality assurance process that they go through. So these groups are quite new still, and we're working to build those, but it's working really well. And what we're seeing in improving our classrooms, which is well underway for this year now, is that we're now getting more teachers involved in the delivery of that. So it's bringing everything closer to the classroom. And the leadership from the classroom now has a much stronger drive in this than it did previously. So from a leadership perspective, we are now looking at teachers strongly driving this from a practice perspective. We've got the senior leader perspective with the head teachers, and then we've got our middle leaders, principal teachers working together. So that's sort of what the whole picture looks like. And that's great. And I can tell you a lovely story about all of that. But of course, the question is, that's great. So what? That's the question, you know, that we're always asking. So let me show you a little bit of our evaluation data just to finish off. So I'm going to talk about each of those programmes, just one slide each, and then I'm going to take a step back and say, but here's what the data overall is telling us about these programmes. So this is the self-reported data from teachers over the last 2 years, and we triangulate this with their case studies. So we look at both things. So you can see there, when we look at the impact on both students and teachers in terms of improving our classrooms, it's really strong. It is, and that's been consistent now for the 3 years that I've done this role. But this year I also went back and I spoke to people that had done or been involved in the programme 3, 4, 5 years ago. And that's what you see at the bottom there. Now there's some words in here that I'm going to probably say quite a few times over the next 2 minutes or so. And you'll see the word confidence, you'll see networks in there, data comes through really strongly as well. And you'll see that across the school leaders, and those are people that have seen a number of teachers go through this programme, people that have become mentors and not become mentors, and that confidence. So people that have become mentors or not, it's really common that they say, as a result of doing this, I've now done lots of things beyond my classroom. So that opportunities for leadership is built through that practice for them. And often not just within their own school, but beyond their own school as well. That's really common. So that's what IOC looks like. iOS and IOD, again, you'll see that word confidence coming through. There's always a lot of talk about changes in practice. Tracking data comes through because we do a lot of work with that. And that's an area that we often find people talk about a lot. So I did something really simple. I filmed head teachers and principal teachers in secondary schools doing tracking meetings with their teams, because people were saying, I'm not really sure if I'm doing this the right way. And it was an area that people were not confident in. So we said, right, okay, it took me a while to find people that were willing to volunteer to do that, to be filmed doing it. But honestly, those videos have been used so much and people have come out going, that works for us. We talk about a process called fact, story, action. It's very practical. But that, I think, has a big impact on people's confidence as we're just opening it up, going, well, this is what it looks like. Here's how this person does it. Doesn't mean that's how you have to do it. We do a lot of that. So since I was at the Belmas conference in the summer, my next job, I think I said then, was to take a step back and look at all of this data together and say, well, what do all the programs do? What's the common thing? And there were 3 themes that jumped out of all of the data, and you'll see them on the screen there. So the networking, the bringing people together across geographical boundaries, school boundaries. I think what we've learned is that we've worked really hard on building high levels of trust within the networks. So actually for our leads and IOC, the people that are delivering locally, somebody will phone up and go, oh, could you come and help me with that session? Because that bit's new to me and I don't think that just happens now. So actually that leadership is there. The improved use of data I've said a bit about already, that's been huge for us. And it's something that people continually say, regardless of which programme that you are in. Everyone is now more confident at how they use data to make practice better. And that's both quantitative and qualitative, which we still need to do a bit more work on. But the thing that made me the happiest, it did when I saw it, was every single person talked about this. This is about leadership from the classroom. That's what this does, is it focuses on making things better directly for children and young people in the classroom. And that leadership is seen from teachers, from the middle leaders and from the senior leaders. I also wanted to include a quote from our external evaluation partner, because I could just make all this up. I really haven't, but I could. So you'll see at the bottom there a quote from our external evaluation partner. And it talks about that collective agency to do this. And that is how it feels from me, because this is not about me. This is about everybody that I work with, you know, and the 750 teachers that I have as part of this year. So, you know, so our numbers are quite big. And then across those groups, I've got another 50 people. So we're a big network, but it works. And that's great. So that's a little bit about our impact. Final slide. We've got a really strong commitment to keep this going, despite the fact we won't have any money at the end of March, which is obviously a problem. However, our 8 directors of education have committed to a post. So there will be somebody to keep this work going and to keep those networks together, because it does need a person to do that. I am on the journey of further developing the principle of subsidiarity. And I think you could hear that in what I'm saying, that we want to bring it closer to where it's happening. And this is, I hope you can see, ultimately about making that idea of a network learning system work in practice. Thank you very much for listening this morning, everyone. And I'm very happy to answer questions, as I'm sure you can probably tell.
Thank you so much, Alison. Such an inspiring presentations. I was hoping we could save questions and to our joint discussion later. Be clear with the presentations first. I hope that's all right with everyone. So I think we move to the next presenter. So we welcome Alex McTaggart. I'm not sure if you were with us from the start. So I said I was going to be the bad cop concerning time. So if I see that you talk for too long, I will kind of say that not that the time is up, but it's about time to finish off the presentation. So I will hand over to you, Alex. But we can't hear you. We can perhaps help you with that, as we'll see up here like that.
So is that because you can't unmute yourself, Alex? Is that right? You can't unmute yourself. Cynthia, can you see if you can unmute Alex's mic, please? That's not good. Otherwise, Alex, what you'll have to do is that amazingly technological solution of going out and coming back in again. Yeah, okay, we'll see you in a minute. Thank you. Oh, no, you're there. We've got that. We can hear you now, I think.
Yeah.
No, we still can't hear you, I'm afraid.
You need to go out and come back in again, I think. Yeah. Okay, we'll see you in a minute. In the meantime, there must be a question that somebody wants to ask Alison, because that, again, you can see why we invited you back. Alison, it's a great presentation. Thank you. I think what I really like about the work they're doing in Scotland is their links through to universities. And I know many of you will be engaged in programs where, as a university, you're regularly and well engaged with your practitioners. But the way in which Alison's program is embedded through the university to the local area is just, you know, such a role modeling program for me, and the work that they've been doing there. It was great, Alison, to hear that and to see some of that data you collected. It's fabulous.
Thank you. That's a really interesting partnership for us. So actually we had our audit on Monday. So we have an annual audit with them, and when obviously there's, you know, SCQF 11 requirements that we have to fulfill, and I submitted everything ahead of that. And when we came on to the call, and they said, we don't want to talk to you about your academic standards, actually, because we've looked at everything and it's great. And what we want to talk to you about is your next steps. And that's a really valuable conversation. So it is of huge value to us as well. So yeah, it's great. It brings a really helpful
Alex,
I think we've got two profiles for you. Can we hear you now? Would you like to just greet us or say something?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
we can. Cynthia, you need to remove the other profile of Alex, because that's giving us some feedback, please. So hopefully that one will disappear.
Oh, is it gone?
I think it's gone now. So I think you're, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. So thank you, Suzanne, for inviting me today. And we're talking about crisis and educational leadership. And so my contribution comes from a little different corner of the debate and the conversation. I'm going to be talking a little bit about a book that after 2 years I finally finished about 3 weeks ago. And it's titled Educational Leadership and the Climate Crisis, published by Routledge. So how long have I got, Suzanne?
20 minutes.
20 minutes, okay, yeah. All right. I don't know, all of you have probably done, you know, big pieces of writing like this before. Where do you start? You know, there's so much in it to talk about. So I'm just going to start very, very generally at the moment, you know, about my story. Why did I want to write about the climate crisis and then conjoin that with the topic of educational leadership? Well, mostly it was because I wrote something in, I think, 2021, which I put out through the International Journal of Leadership and Education. It's quite a critical piece, and it was about the global crises of inequity, injustice, climate crisis, and the limitations of the models of educational leadership that our educators are provided with at an institutional and establishment level, the limitations of these models to really tackle the very complex issues of climate change. I was talking there about the reification of terms, making something of nothing, you know, calling yourself a transformational leader because you've read an article about it, and then actually carrying on to be exactly what you were before, but suddenly reifying this term, which then suddenly ticks all those boxes to say, oh, of course I'm dealing with things like climate change and injustice and inequity because, hey, I'm a transformational leader. I read the article, it says so. Look, I even put it on my business card, right? So this is, as we all know, colleagues, you know, the huge issues we're faced with, particularly models of educational leadership and their genealogy, which sits very firmly within the core of business knowledge generation. And that massively affects how we educators are then told to lead and taught to lead. And I'll say trained, not educated, trained to lead. And so that got me thinking about why is it that our schools are failing, and not in the way that Ofsted might want us to think about failing, but in global societal terms. Why is it that every generation of school produces another cohort of students who go through their school life painting nice pictures about, you know, trees and animals and singing the right songs and doing the right epistemological inquiries into why we should save the world, and yet they all go out and the first thing they want to do is buy themselves a Porsche, fly business class, eat meat every single day, and all these things that, you know. So why are we failing as educators to have consistency across the board here? It's a massive issue, so that's why I'm saying it's difficult to unpack this book succinctly here in 20 minutes. So obviously my hint to all of you is go and buy it, please, and read it, and it'll make it a lot easier for you, obviously, and suggest it to your library as well, please. There, plug over. But this is the issue, is how do you actually get to that situation? I thought, well, educational leadership is probably at the core of this somewhere. I mean, we can blame policy, we can blame parents, we can blame homes, we can blame states, but educational leaders are quite good as well at maybe downplaying their significance and importance in this. And that's what got me thinking about what does educational leadership have to say about the global climate crisis. I mean, I take a very Freirean approach here, you know, considering that, you know, what is education about? Well, education is about becoming more human, isn't it? That's why we are educated. We go through a process of education to become more ourselves. And in inquiring into that, I went into, I won't say the archaeology, I'll say the genealogy of knowledge, as to where do our knowledges come from and what are they built upon? And what is it that has led us over thousands and hundreds of thousands of years to come to this point as a genus, Homo sapiens sapiens, to be in the position where we are so ultimately capable of educating and knowing and technologizing, and yet we are completely incapable of reacting to the imminent future which is coming towards us of a rapidly overheating planet. Why are we so incapable there of doing that? And so this inquiry took me back into, you know, our species and how we evolved and how we came to be what we were. Interestingly, the last big piece of biological evolution that happened to our brains happened probably about 40 to 50,000 years ago, when we went from being Homo sapiens to Homo sapiens sapiens. And this is when our brains evolved to accommodate our complex tool-making practices, which at the times were things like sharpening flints, bows and arrows, making complex skinning tools, building shelters. This is a level of evolution that if we then fast forward 50,000 years to the last 300 years and think what has happened there, and we look at the introduction of industrialization, the discovery of fossil fuels, the use of them in order to enable labor to be taken care of in a mechanized way. This is an enormous change to the human genus. And then we come into another phase, and literally in the last 20 to 30 years, where a great deal of our social interactions are pushed into a different space completely. where it's happened over the last 300,000-400,000 years. Everything that we've done to strategize and prioritize and think through what it is that makes us human is now being shifted into a different modality and a different medium. And that also brings with it significant challenges. That's an important point, because if we look at all the creatures on planet Earth and we wonder, what is it that makes humans so different? And why did we end up being the apex animal on this planet and not the whale or the dolphin or the lion or the monkey? The reason is, the clue is in our genus's name. It's the Homo sapiens sapiens. It's the double knowing. It's the double wiseness. We have a voice box, which is unique, with which we can communicate complex thought. We have opposable thumbs, so we can create complex tools. But the real issue that makes us the apex animal is our ability to work as a social group, to work with large amounts of people and strategize for the future. This is, if you like, this is our superpower on planet Earth. You can take all the other things away, but the really important thing is how we work collectively and how we work as groups. So with that point understood, and then understanding too that schools, colleges, nurseries, universities, on a good day, they also work deeply collaboratively and deeply cooperatively. I say on a good day. They, in their own way, manifest much of what it is that is the best of humanity. So this should be an easy win for schools, colleges, nurseries, and universities to say, well, we already do the best of what humanity does. So now let's move that forward into educating generations, which will then treat our planet with respect and develop a nurture relationship towards it. And then we come up against, well, what Marx called the metabolic rift, but let's push it into the education sector. This gap we have between what we are as human beings and the natural resource around us, and how education seems completely incapable of addressing this in any way that goes beyond the cognitive into the affective and into the physical, because that's really where change happens. And so naturally, there then ensues a large critique of neoliberalism, neoliberal practice. It starts with the critique of capitalist practices that emerge essentially on the back of the Enlightenment. And so then it ends up being a critique of the Enlightenment and the predecessors of the Enlightenment. I'll take you back in history a little bit to the 1600s, the 30 Years' War. Europeans in the room will be very familiar with the concept of the 30 Years' War. This was the most debilitating, disastrous, catastrophic conflict that the world had probably ever seen. It took 30 years at a time when most people's lives lasted about 30 years. It was a lifetime war. It was accompanied by 2 massive plagues and 2 enormous harvest blights. In parts of Europe, 80% of the population died. Overall, about 40% of the population died. It was the biggest apocalyptic catastrophe that we can possibly imagine. By the way, Britain was largely relieved from the war because it's an island. After this war, a bunch of gentlemen sat down and decided that never again must something like this happen. And therefore, because it was based mainly upon belief, we need to move our thinking into rationality and business. Because if we can all communicate on terms that are transactional and businesslike, we will never again go to war like this. And hey presto, the Enlightenment was born. However, the roots of the Enlightenment are based upon the Protestant Calvinist belief in thinking and rationality. And there's a very good scholar from the University of Vienna called Tröler who deals with this. The Enlightenment stress in belief over rationality. So while the Enlightenment is a movement of science and rationality, it is one that believes in the science of rationality. And this leads us to the situation that we're in to this day, which is that we have a culture of belief in metrics. The metrics don't necessarily have to be valid or trustworthy. The metrics have to be believable. And now let's fast forward 400 years to Michael Gove, who was the Education Secretary in England, for those of you who are not familiar with our context in England, he's a very good example of how this metric system works. When he took on the position of Secretary of State for Education, went out to all of his constituents and commissioned a study on what should happen in education in England. And the study came back and it told him more engagement in the community, more collectivism, more focus on teacher professionalism, and he didn't like any of those ideas. So guess what he did? He completely ignored the findings and, based upon his political beliefs, produced his own metrics, meaning that then the policies of the day from government were informed by the ideology of the then political party in power. Now, that ideology is deeply in line with neoliberal concepts, which are genealogically aligned with the Enlightenment. And so, by a long roundabout way, I'm coming to my point, which is, is he the editor of The Spectator, Deborah? Goodness
yes,
me.
appointed 21 hours ago, Alex.
Okay, well, there you go. Pathway to success through metrics. Yeah, so, I mean, and, Helen Gunter writes about this a lot as well, the issue with metrics and how easily they are kidnapped and aligned and misaligned for uses that are dominating rather than valid. And so this is part of the culture that we live in now. So the ways that we think about our planet, the epistemologies that we deploy on a regular basis are all influenced by our ontology as a species, which is to do with efficiency, effectiveness, and competitiveness. And these matters underscore everything that we do. So when we try and do, for example, in the book, I use the example of these forest planting projects, which you've probably read about all over the world. We understand that one of the best ways of capturing carbon is by planting trees. A tree grows naturally, it captures carbon within itself. It doesn't require any fancy technology to do it, and it's the best way to do it. So let's plant trees all over planet Earth, and maybe we can capture back some of that carbon that we've been releasing for the last 200 years. So there's this phenomenon called phantom forests all over the world. An example is given in the Philippines, where one morning the Guinness Book of Records went to the Philippines, and there tens of thousands of people were recruited to go and plant trees in the Philippines, mangroves, to make mangrove swamps. And they planted, I think it was something like 1 million trees in 6 hours in one morning. They duly entered the Guinness Book of Records. There was an enormous fanfare. It went out into the media. It was televised, and everybody walked around shaking hands, job done. It was even supervised by a British academic specialised in ecology. Fast forward 5 years, 98% of those trees are dead. And this is a common phenomenon around the world. This is happening in China, it's happening in Turkey, it's happening in Africa. So why is it that we as a species are so incapable of actually addressing the climate crisis? And again, I bring you back to this example of metrics and our ontology as a species, which is that we are more focused upon the imminent moment and the spectacle of now and the result it can produce than we are in the long term. And I'm going to conclude here now by going to a thinker who I got very into in the book, a man called Günther Anders. I'm a German speaker as well, so I'm often looking at German speakers for their knowledge. He studied, funnily enough, with Hannah Arendt it wasn't Heidelberg, it was another German university, under Martin Heidegger and Edmund Husserl, who are the great phenomenologists. Interesting bit of gossip here, interestingly. Hannah Arendt, the great political philosopher, had a long-standing affair with Martin Heidegger, who was her Doktorvater, her PhD supervisor, and then they split up. Hannah Arendt was Jewish. Heidegger was a Nazi, weirdly enough. So you can imagine that didn't work very well in 1933, 1934. She then married Günther Anders, and they eloped to Paris and eventually ended up in New York. So all of them are phenomenologists to a certain extent, but Günther Anders' work is extraordinary. It's not well known in the English-speaking world. It's well known in the French-speaking and German-speaking world. Günther Anders writes about this concept of Promethean shame, which is that humans are almost shamed by their own technologies that they've developed, which so outstrip and outmatch them. If you've been a primary school teacher before, you'll understand this. No teacher can compete with an iPhone. No teacher can compete with an iPad because they are so seductive. They are so extraordinarily well crafted that your personality, your voice, your energy is lost against a child with an iPad. It's a good example of Promethean shame. But the one concept that really fascinated me here for this book was in German it's called the Antiquiertheit des Menschen, which is the antiquatedness of humanity. And he draws it back to what I mentioned at the beginning, the fact that the last time our brains really evolved was about 50,000 years ago, and they haven't evolved since. So now the technologies that we have built, because we are very clever tool makers, have far outstripped our human ability to be able to countenance the implications of those technologies and where they are taking us and what they will do to us. His example at the time was the atomic bomb of Hiroshima, because that was his generation. And it's a good example because it shows how we humans have created something that goes beyond our ken. We can see the pictures, we can watch the films, but we still can't understand what implications this has for us. And the current enormous shift is the shift in the way that we as social animals, and remember that socialness about us is our apex feature. The important thing is to understand that we have changed the way we do that. We are not doing it in the way that led us to become apex animals. We've changed the modality of it. So now our communications happen in this very distended manner that we're experiencing now, or they happen over phones. I've got 4 kids. My 17-year-old daughter lives her life through her phone and her chats on it. A good example, my daughter the other day, I had a huge shriek from upstairs and wailing and screaming, and I ran upstairs thinking that she'd fallen over and broken her arm or something, and there she was sat staring at her iPhone. I said, what happened? She went, oh my God, Dad, I just did reply all, and I just wanted to reply to my friend. I can't believe it. And she went into a fugue, literally for about 3 hours. She couldn't talk. She shut down. Now, we've all probably experienced similar things to this before. The problem is, again, returning to Anders, is that we're antiquated as humans. Our brains aren't ready to deal with this. The fact is that we're set up to measure the mimicry of someone's face, interpret the tone of their voice, feel the warmth of their presence in order to understand our social reality. What these new media do is that they distance ourselves from our very nature. And if you're a scholar of Marx, you'll know that part of his critique is about humans' distance from our own very nature. And this comes up again and again. It comes up in Freire, it comes up in Gadotti, it comes up in whoever you might wish to read upon the matter. Our distance from our nature, our separation from our own planet, from the creatures around us, and our very own human nature is probably central to the issue that educators face and educational leaders face, is that we are separated from who we are and from our nature. So with this problem situation, I do not propose a solution. I never would. I give you the ideas, the thoughts, the concepts, a few suggestions perhaps, but one of the key things to notice and to take away is the beauty of our planet and all the creatures on it, our importance in it, not as an exploiter, a chopper, a hacker, a raper, a murderer, but as a nurturer of a resource that we have made finite and that we are able to destroy and that we are destroying. And possibly the call for educational leaders is to use those resources at your disposal that work best with you in ways that make sense to you in your context with your students and your teachers to the best that you can based upon those knowledges. Key is, of course, critical thinking. It will be the major element which helps our species survive or not, and also a love of our planet. And I take Freire's concept of love, which he draws from Erich Fromm, which is love is a relationship that requires labor. It's about maintenance. It's about work. It's not just something that you say, oh, love your planet, and it'll happen. You need to work at it. You need, like in a good relationship, you need to work on it. You need to maintain it. And this is something we will need to probably include into our curricula. And yes, Suzanne, I've probably gone well over time there, but I think that I'll sum up right there and leave it there.
Thank you so much for an important and enlightening presentation. I'm sure there will be plenty of questions and reflections on it. So I think we will move on to a third and final presenter. We're so glad that you accepted our invite, Mowafaq. So the floor is yours.
Hi, Suzanne. Hi to
Hi,
everyone.
nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. I hope that I still have a time.
Mowafaq, can you just stop for a second, please? Cynthia, can you remove Mowafaq's other screen that's in the meeting, please? Because otherwise we'll get back from it. There we go. That should drop out in a second now, hopefully. No, still there, Cynthia.
This noise from me?
Yeah, it's because you've logged in twice, Mowafaq, so we're getting feedback. I don't know if you're able to mute the other one. We're trying to remove it. Should be better now, hopefully.
Hi. Now it's okay?
Great, thank you. That's, oh, no, it still sounds like
it's not from me, this noise, because maybe everyone
so if me
close
and
the
Sam
mic.
both mute, hopefully you'll be fine.
Is everyone else muted? Sometimes it can be just coming from somewhere else. Okay.
Yeah. Very nice. Now it's okay. I just a second to share my presentation, please. Okay. Okay. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm presenting this paper, which already published this month at the International Journal of Educational Management. It's about self-efficacy of school principals for achieving effective school functioning during the COVID-19 crisis. Thank you, Suzanne, and this RIG for inviting me for leadership preparation and development RIG. Appreciate it so much. If I just continue what we listened before me about the crisis, we can't anymore pretend that we are so ready for crisis in the context of leadership and management in schools. What makes this study is so important and significant because it was done in real time of the closure in the COVID-19, and meanwhile the COVID-19 crisis, and we asked school principals and teachers, meanwhile they are facing these challenges and this crisis time. This was part of larger research project, which with research partners in cooperation with the DAAS and Schechter. The project research was titled School Management in the COVID-19 Crisis Perceptions of School Principals. It was about the challenges and opportunities, and also the focus was a comparative study between Arab and Jewish societies, and funded by the Office of the Chief Scientist in Israel. So crisis defined as urgent situations that require an immediate and decisive response from the organization, particularly from the leaders. School leaders are expected to react immediately to have answers to the students, to the parents, to the teachers. And this pandemic highlighted the critical importance of the effective crisis leadership in educational settings. The pandemic revealed the important role of the school in providing stability and support to students, staff, and the community during crisis. What suggests the need of extensive empirical research that can connect between school principals' characteristics as school principal self-efficacy and the school functioning during crisis. The context, I already presented the context of this study. And again, school principals are expected for flexibility, rapid decision makings, and effective communications with all of the staff. If we just take a look about the self-efficacy of school principals, it was referred to the leadership ability in the context of their faith in their own capabilities, skills, knowledge, and ability to lead others. Friedman and Brahimi referred the concept as subjective feelings constituting a condition for individual willingness to take steps likely to bring about the expected results. School functioning during the crisis, represent 3 stages. The first stage, the immediate organization at the outset of the crisis, what done in the immediate now, and what to do in the first moment of the crisis. The second stage was staff training, ongoing consolations, handling complexities. The third was about implementing processes to reduce post-traumatic responses, restoring routines after the acute stage has passed, and long-term monitoring. The research questions was 2. The first one was about does the school principal self-efficacy positively predict the school functioning during the COVID-19 pandemic crisis? And are there significant cultural differences between Arab and Jewish societies in the school principal self-efficacy and functioning? The research design and participants, it was 103 school principals participated and answered the questionnaire about their self-efficacy, and 1,031 teachers participated and answered the questionnaire about the school functioning during the crisis. Here is the dimensions of the questionnaire of the school principal self-efficacy. It was about general management efficacy. The second dimension was about leadership efficacy. The third one about human relation efficacy. The fourth, external relations efficacy, and pedagogical leadership efficacy. As you see, one sample item from each dimension. School functioning during the crisis dimensions was measured by questionnaire by Shani and Somer. This scale was 0.93, the Kornbach alpha, the scale reliability, and was measured by 56 items with 3 main dimensions, action taken at school during the crisis and functioning of the staff. The second dimension was about functioning of the school, of the principal during the crisis, and school functioning with the students. The methodology was we conducted the structural equitation modeling using AMOS. Further, linear regression was employed also to examine differences between the two cultures to determine which dimensions best predicted the functioning during crisis, and the differences between Arab and Jewish societies on the different dimensions were examined using the independent sample t-test to compare the means of the two independent groups. In order to be so specific in the 20 minutes limit, I didn't present here all of the models. I just present here just one of the same models, which present all of the sample. When we checked the whole sample of the 103 schools, this was significant. This is the fit model of the same model, the CFI, NFI, all of the criteria of accepting this model, which says that school principal self-efficacy positively predict school functioning during the crisis, which means that there is a direct impact of leadership and the school leaders during crisis. The school principals can make a difference. This is the big title of what we see here, and the two other models checked whether if we take the same model, just run it to the sample of from Arab societies or Jewish societies, the same model was not significant. Maybe because of the not so large sample. Okay, maybe this was reasons. When we checked cultural differences, Arab and Jewish schools in concerning the principal self-efficacy instruments, we found that higher external relations efficacy higher in Arab school principals compared to Jewish school principals. Furthermore, this was the human relations efficacy was the only dimension consistently predicting school functioning in both societies. This is an important point in the 5 dimensions of school principals efficacy. The dominant dimension was just the human relations efficacy that predict school functioning during a crisis. What does that mean? It mean that there is a crucial role of human relations efficacy, of caring leadership, of human relation aspects from the leader to act during a crisis. The staff and the teachers are not waiting for instructions or orders in crisis time. They need more empathy, support, communication. They need from the leaders, to hear them, as this highlights the critical importance of interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence in crisis leadership. Principals who felt confident in their ability to emphasize, communicate, support the staff and students and parents, they were better able to maintain school operations and morale during these challenging periods. Again, about the cross-cultural differences in crisis leadership, maybe these can be in explanations of why we had the study revealed that interesting difference between Arab and Jewish students, while self-efficacy levels similar, Arab school principals reported higher efficacy in managing external relations. Okay, so in this dimension, we had here something that was maybe because these differences maybe stems from unequal challenges faced by the Arab schools, including lower socioeconomic status and limited technological resources. Maybe this is an importance for considering cultural and contextual factors in leadership development, as well as the need for targeted support to address equity issues such as social justice leadership in crisis response. So again, the external relations is very important to develop effective communication strategies, to foster connections with other schools and educational institutions, building strong relationship with the local organization and stakeholders, identifying and securing additional support during a crisis. I just try here to explain what does that mean for school principals leaders to implement external relations, to empower external relations during crisis. For conclusions and the future directions, the COVID pandemic provided valuable insights into the critical role of the crisis leadership in education. Move to essential integrate these lessons into leadership preparation and development programs. Future research should focus on the long-term impacts on the crisis, on the educational leadership effectiveness, different crisis management strategies, and ways to build systematic resilience in educational institutions. Also to ensure they remain relevant and effective in preparing leaders for an increasingly complex and unpredictable educational landscape, in order to equip educational leaders to navigate future crises and ensure the resilience and success of our schools. I also for future directions to empower the and foster resilience and adaptability to school principals and leaders in order to maintain and lead schools in stability and effectiveness also during challenging future unexpected crisis. In the second part, I prepared for something like workshop in order to give the who will choose the discussion sessions to more about policy and the practice and future research directions. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very interesting presentation, and I can see some similarities compared to the situation that was in Sweden during COVID and principal leaders. So now we have done all 3 presentations, and it's time to be active as a group. We have prepared 3 breakout rooms. Cynthia has helped us, so we've named them by the names of the presenters. So you can just choose which room you would like to go to, and Bernie, Deb, and me will also have decided to go to one room each. And then we have about 30 minutes for a fruitful discussion in smaller breakout rooms. And then Cynthia will call us back about 30 minutes from now. And then we will sum up here in the main room. Wish you all a good discussion.
Thanks, Suzanne. Cynthia, can we stop the recording there or pause the recording there? So I've had a couple of comments from people who've had to leave, you know, people who've, you know, have other commitments. And in Japan, it was tea time. So Midori went to go and cook her children's tea. So she left us a nice message for that.
I have to add as well that I need to leave because I'm hosting a meeting in 15 minutes. You go and grab a sandwich or something and set up for that.
Not to worry. Thank you. Thank you so much. We've got 15 minutes, and before I do a wrap up, I just wanted to know, with the people that are here at the moment, is there anything that you'd like to share that came out of the conversations in the breakout rooms, or something that you've been waiting to share with the whole group? Please feel free to unmute and share with us.
Thanks for 3 great presentations this morning while we've still got our contributors with us. Alex, your hand is up.
I wanted to ask Mowafaq a question. Mowafaq, it's nice to see you again.
Hi, Alex.
So I wanted to ask you, why did you choose the word resilience? And bear with me, this is a loaded question.
No, it's okay. It was just part of future directions research. It's not what it didn't part of the research. I just recommendations in order to how can we prepare future leadership and development in this way in order to establish and empower resilience organization in the organizational context in the crisis, how to to keep stability, organizational stability during a crisis. This was just as a future research recommendation.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's a good explanation. I kind of understand it in the concept of crisis, to be resilient within crisis. But I would like now to bring in another word, transformation. And so that's why I was curious as to why you're using the word resilience and not transformation, because resilience denotes an acceptance of the injustices and the challenges and fighting back against them in order to maintain the status quo. Whereas transformation denotes fighting back against them in order to change them and move into a more positive space for students and teachers. So that was my thought, really. That's why I said it's a loaded question. Apologies.
No, it's very, very nice. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Rania.
Hi, thank you,
Rania,
everyone. Yep. And also for Mowafaq, because I think what you had shared with us, thank you for your presentation for sure and enlightening us. I think now we're in the process of how we can explore crisis in a complicated situation, because crisis in a stable community is different than crisis in occupation or in a conflict zone or a crisis. So there is levels, especially that you had focused on COVID. So I think that will take us for a different rounds of how to deal with those principles and not to normalize things, because maybe they are used to the situation that they are in, but for a different people in another country, they would find it a very different practice or innovative or whatever word that would be suitable to describe what the lessons learned from their experience. So I think when we're addressing crisis or uncertain times, the context would make a lot of meaning lessons and maybe recommendations for the future. And because I'm working now on the typologies of crisis, so I think I'm just trying to explore it and delve deeper into that. And what is it exactly that? Because dealing with the war is different than having a gun shooting or having a flood or an earthquake or having COVID. So there are lots of things that we need to work on and help educators to understand what is it the situation and how to deal with and levels of interaction, if I understood that right.
Yeah, sure. The context of the crisis and the type of the crisis, it still mean that we are under abnormal conditions, something unfamiliar conditions that needs from school principals and leaders to react in another way, to take decisions making in very conditions not as in normal conditions. I agree with you, and as part of the discussion in the second part, I just sharing the for example the results of the group that in the discussions group that we discussed together how really can we empower self-efficacy of school principals in the context of a crisis. So really, this was part of your questions, Dr. Rania, that the context or the type of the crisis makes sense. It's okay, I agree with you, but as you see here in the results, that the peer support groups from school principals, how they really encourage and care to each other and support each other. This was the prominent in the first place. The second, how to mentorship programs with experienced principals who experienced, as you said, different types of a crisis. So we can learn from each other, from their experience, what they learned and what can we learn from you and or from Dr. Alex or Bernie. So thank you. It's very good questions, and really the type of the crisis can make sense, and this is very relevant to leadership preparation and development programs, how to prepare and equip future leaderships to behave or to react to different types of crisis.
Any other questions? Yes, Christopher.
Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank again the three speakers. It's unfortunate that we could only be in one of the breakout rooms rather than being able to engage with all of you. So thanks again. But as we discussed, I think we did discuss that there is, although there are different presentations, there are different things which are brought out in the three presentations. And I think what I'm taking with me is, again, the importance behind collaboration, the importance of being open, sincere towards each other. So going back to, I think, the values that are fundamental for human development, for growth. I think Alex was alluding to this. And I think we need, as leaders, as potential leaders, because even the notion of being a leader is a loaded term. And one would not call himself or herself a leader, but it's something that is bestowed to us by others. That's my feeling. And I feel that's what I want to cherish from this presentation, is the importance of being open, sincere towards each other. And it's the only way where people then end up feeling empowered, willing to give and share of what their expertise is. And so I think that's where we come to network. And I think if I can go to my colleague from Israel, because I'm sure the group may have raised this, because you did raise the importance of networking then, which I believe is the way forward. I firmly believe in this. And as a country, we've we're trying to move in that direction as well, towards networks and network learning. But I mean, are Israeli and Arab schools networked in any way? Would be my question to Mowafaq. Are they networked? And if they're not, have they thought about the idea of networking, especially to address possible, I think they were identified in the studies, inequalities that may exist between the two. I know this is a very sensitive question, but I think my Israeli colleagues are open to this type of question because they've undertaken a study involving the two. I'll stop there. Thank you very much again for the opportunity.
Hi, Christopher. Thank you for your challenging questions. It's very good questions. As if you just noticed the first slide or the second, it was the acknowledgement. I'm still working together in spite of these challenging conflictual circumstances. We are working together, and in the academics, I mean, in the college, and studying and publishing together, making research together, in spite of these unexpected circumstances that we are facing together. As you say, that as a colleague, we have to cooperate with all over the world and to keep working together in cooperation. And Hans Schechter is my supervisor in my doctorate studies. And we work in a lot of papers published together in a lot of worldwide journals.
Thanks, Mowafaq.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise, really good presentations. Thank you all. A quick question for Alison, if I may, whose heart rate's just gone up because she'll be thinking, "What the hell's he going to ask me?" But you just have to drop it in a sentence about experiences beyond the classroom. This is a particular interest of mine, research-wise, and just what a couple of the key things that come to mind that experiences that they've had, if you would, Alison, please.
Oh, there's a lot of those. So
yeah.
Some of them might be across their education district. So one of the teachers that I worked very closely with, once he'd done IOC, he became a cross-district leader in assessment and moderation. So it's something quite specific. We have other teachers who've actually gone on to become leaders of learning for their education district. And then we've also got these groups of teachers now coming across districts when they've done the programme to look at, well, how do we make that more relevant to the classroom? Are those the best examples? We've done a huge piece of work on AI in the classroom and practice around that, so there's lots of different things where people go beyond their schools. There's loads of examples I could give you, but does that give you a sense of what it looks like, Paul?
It does. And if I could just ask a quick supplementary question, which is, do you pick up any evidence sort of beyond the world of education, either careers that they'd had before or working parallel in the voluntary sector, for example, things completely outside the field?
The honest answer to that is no, but I'm going to tell you why it's no. So I have some anecdotal evidence, but nothing that will go beyond that. And a big part of that, so, I've been asked questions about the contribution to retention rates for teachers around this, to where teachers go in terms of higher education. My honest answer is I don't have the capacity to do that as well as the day job. So I don't know beyond some anecdotal examples that people have told me in passing, is the honest answer.
That's super. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Paul. Any other questions before we wrap up? Timing's been fantastic, and I just want to take the opportunity. I took a few notes, but first of all, thank our three presenters, Alison, Alex, and also Mowafaq, for accepting our invitation. But what a rich discussion that has made us all think, I think, about what is crisis, the pace of crisis, and in relation to our RIG. Are we leading? Are we preparing? And are we drawing a lot of our knowledge about what it is to have led during a crisis, what we learned through that? How do we prepare for leading in future crises, whatever that may lead? And the crisis that we are constantly living in, that perhaps we've normalized as not crisis, but that really are crisis. Those low economic settings or ongoing challenging areas. And I think all three presenters, and Christopher, I thank you because you've drawn a little bit on this, the importance is who's behind the leading, whoever that may be, teachers, educational leaders, that value. Alex, you were talking about the importance and the courage, I would add, to put a mirror to our faces and say, well, is that what needs to change? That's where we need to do the learning, not so much on the what is it that we're not doing well. And so I really do thank you very, very much. I feel we could have gone on for hours, and maybe this is something that the three of us conveners can think about. How do we take it bigger? Because sadly, crises are not going to go away, but there's so much learning for us, particularly under this RIG. So thank you very much. I wish you well. Enjoy the rest of your day, morning, afternoon. I'm about to go and have some dinner. So lovely to meet you, and let's keep talking. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank you,
Thanks.
Cynthia, for your support.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.